Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and good morning. This is session number 5 as part of Cambridge Islamic Finance Structuring Master Series. And the topic of today's session or IFAP is the uses of mutuality and cooperation in Islamic finance. Before this, we have covered 4 topics. The art of structuring Islamic financial products was title of IFAP 1. WAD and its applications in modern banking and finance, we covered as part of IFAP 2. Structuring Islamic investment products, that was the topic of IFAP 3. And last time, we looked into innovations in Sukuk structures as part of IFAP 4. IFAP 5, as the title on the screen suggests, it is on mutuality in Islamic finance. After this, we shall have another 5 modules or IFAPs. The next one is on the uses of law of large numbers and financial inclusion structures. IFAP 7 will be on the use of technology for innovation. IFAP 8 would cover structuring Islamic social finance products. IFAP 9 is on developing profitable non-bank financial products and institutions. And our last IFAP would be on advanced topics in innovation and structuring of Islamic financial products. There are 3 learning objectives. This module should introduce you to the benefits of mutuality and cooperation and their scope in Islamic banking and finance. Islamic banking and finance started as a phenomenon that was supposed to be structured around profit-loss sharing. Profit-loss sharing giving mutual benefits to all the stakeholders. Whether this has happened or not in the practice of Islamic banking and finance, this is another question. So our learning objective number 1 is to introduce the participants, and many of you would already be in Islamic banking and finance industry. So this could be a reminder for you if you are involved in product development teams, or if you think that in future you are going to play a role in this respect. So this module should remind you that there are huge benefits in mutuality and cooperation, which is a basis for the philosophy of profit-loss sharing. It is also an intention of the module or IFAP to highlight that mutuality and cooperation have not been used with any significance so far in Islamic banking and finance, and that it is absolutely imperative to restructure Islamic finance by bringing elements of share economy in it to ensure its authenticity and uniqueness. Because of the lack, or in some cases, absence of profit-loss sharing or the elements of share economy in Islamic banking and finance, we find that a lot of people, both Muslims and non-Muslims, would criticize Islamic banking and finance. Although not all the criticisms are valid, but there are certain elements in those criticisms which have direct relevance to the practice of Islamic banking and finance. The third learning objective is to use some examples to show that mutuality and cooperation can be used with effect in Islamic banking and finance. As always, there are 3 learning outcomes. After having studied this module, or after having participated in this online Zoom session, the participants must be able to understand how different models of takaful being used in Islamic insurance markets fall short of mutuality. So following the learning objectives, okay, we will use example of takaful, which by its very nature is supposed to be cooperative and mutual in nature. But we will see that even in takaful, the elements of mutuality and cooperation are rather limited. Learning outcome number two, the participants must also be able to develop skills to start specializing in Islamic financial innovation and Sharia compliant product development. This is a recurring theme of all the IFAPs. A major focus in these 10 modules is to give you food for thought to start innovating in Islamic banking and finance. For innovation, you must have a broad-minded approach. The people who take conservative views on certain aspects, certain elements, certain phenomena, their ability to innovate is rather limited. So those of you who would like to specialize in innovation, who would like to come up with new products, new Islamic financial products, you have to consider pushing the boundaries of Islamic finance and, of course, applications of Islamic jurisprudence outward. The learning outcome number three is for the participants to be able to start thinking out of the box to start developing third generation Islamic financial products. Now, first generation Islamic financial products in many ways were complete compromise on a lot of principles. The overall environment in the countries where Islamic banking and finance was introduced was in many cases hostile. In other cases, it wasn't conducive for the operations of Islamic banks and financial institutions. And hence, a lot of products were offered which were at best a compromise. If I give you example of USA, first Islamic mortgages or first set of Islamic mortgages introduced in USA, there were two sets of documents. First set would be the one which would attract regulatory attention. And that set used to be based on interest because there was no provision for offering mortgages which were interest-free. So the suppliers of Islamic mortgages in the USA, in the first wave of product development, they would have some private documents signed by the institution and the customers, which would be Sharia documents. Then we had the second generation. And that second generation of Islamic financial products, this is still in the market. We have more authentic, more organized Islamic financial products, which would fulfill not only regulatory requirements, but Sharia requirements as well. The third generation would be based on technology. It would be based on some further applications of fiqhul muamalat al-maliyah, combining the fiqhi principles with the new trends in technology. Some of these products have already come into the market. Now, I would start with a rather seemingly irrelevant phenomenon, irrelevant sport, Wimbledon. I thought of starting this IFAP with a reference to Wimbledon. Number one, because Wimbledon final took place just a few days ago. And many of you would have found it a very interesting final. Someone relatively from, if I refer to this generation analogy, someone from the second generation of tennis players was facing someone who represents the third generation of Wimbledon players. And the third generation won. But that is not my focus when I thought of introducing this slide to the IFAP for today. When I was watching Wimbledon final, quite a few thoughts were coming into my mind as someone who specializes in Islamic financial innovation. You would like to consider certain aspects of even some irrelevant activities, irrelevant phenomena for development of financial products. Now, if you Google, you will find that a very serious number of people watch Wimbledon, at least Wimbledon final, if not the whole tournament. Last year was a record year, 2022, when about 25 million people watched the final online or on TV screens wherever this was shown. It was, I think, 25.5 million people world over watched Wimbledon. Now, Wimbledon is a tennis tournament which is very conservative. Its conservatism is like conservatism in Islam, because Islamic phenomena tend to be conservative as well. And I thought, if something new is introduced, and this could be introduced by the organizers of Wimbledon or someone else. This is a period of artificial intelligence. AI-driven activities are everywhere, and AI and big data analysis are playing a very important role in businesses in almost all the sectors. So if someone, say me, if I want to structure a financial product around Wimbledon, even if I'm not a stakeholder in the sport, I think this is possible. So if I want to introduce an independent prize for the winner, for example, I say there would be a prize of 10 million pounds or 25 million pounds for the winner. And I have someone, an institution, a company, a business, they are willing to underwrite this 25 million. How would I go about it? I would announce that those who would be participating in this prize program, one of them would receive 25 million pounds. So if 25.5 million people watched last year, one of these 25 million people would receive 25 million. Until now, I'm not referring to 25 million for the tournament winner. We will come to that point. So you actually can win 25 million, one of you, if you contribute to the winning prize money for the final winner of the tournament, the title holder. And that money could be $2 or £2, whatever is the currency, £5, $5 or $10. Let me use the figure of £10 or $10. If it is dollars, then the prize money would be in dollars. If it is in pounds, the prize money would be in pounds. Okay, because you understand dollars more than pounds, so $10, this is the amount which anyone who would like to be considered for a prize of $25 million would put into the prize money pot for the player, the final player, the title holder 2023 Wimbledon, for example, or if it is for next year, 2024. If out of these 25 million, about say 10 million, if they participate in this program, so that would be 10 million multiplied with $10, that would be 100 million collection. That would go into the prize pot, i.e. the winning money for the player. This first 25 million underwriting, this came from a business. Say it came from BMW. So BMW said, we would be giving a prize of $25 million to someone who would be drawn out of a pot of the contributors to the prize money. So this money is coming from an independent source. It has nothing to do with the collections. This would be the focus of our IFAB 7. We would go into the details of this one when we discuss the uses of law of large numbers. I think this is the next one, or IFAB number 7. So, and we will look into the Sharia technicalities of this one. This generates 100 million in pot, and 25 million comes from somewhere else. And if 25 million or 50 million, whatever we decide to give to the player, still we are left with quite a lot of money in the pot. If the net amount in the pot is 25 million, and if this continues every year and there's no growth in numbers, in 5 years, we would have 125 million in the pot. This is one idea of developing a product around something which has nothing to do with financial services. However, people who are into technology and big data, they can look into it as a very lucrative financial product, and this could be made Sharia compliant as well. Another product which could be structured around this kind of idea is a Hajj product. You look into the number of people going for Hajj, and they spend a lot of money on Hajj. If I want to go to Hajj from UK, the Hajj expenses range from £6,000 to £15,000, depending on what kind of facilities I would like to have during my pilgrimage. So it's a lot of money, and millions, a few million people, they go for Hajj every year. If in addition to 6,000, if they're asked to contribute $50 to a global pot, which could be used for a number of activities, social activities, other activities, that can give rise to serious amount of money. And we would look into these things in our IFAP, which would focus on the law of large numbers. So this was a kind of teaser, Wimbledon, seemingly irrelevant phenomenon. Okay, even you can use this one to come up with some financial products, including Islamic financial products. Now, after this, I would like to go to the main topic, which is mutuality. Let me explain in rather simple technical terms what we mean by mutuality. If there are two parties, A and B, they are said to mutually benefit from a phenomenon X. X could be an activity, X could be a business, X could be something like a meaningful activity. So parties A and B are said to mutually benefit from a phenomenon X if there are these 2 or 2.5 conditions, if these conditions are met. If the marginal benefits, delta B's marginal benefits accruing to party A from this phenomenon activity X is not equal to the marginal loss accruing to party B for participating in this activity. So again, I'll say parties A and B are said to mutually benefit from a phenomenon X if additional marginal benefits accruing to party A for participating in X are not equal to the marginal losses accruing to party B for participating in this activity. So this is condition number 1. Condition number 2 is that the marginal benefits accruing to party A for participating in the phenomenon activity X plus marginal benefits accruing to party B for participating in X. So this combination, sum of these two individual benefits is greater than the individual benefits accruing to the parties for participating in X. So it's marginal benefits accruing to party A for participating in X, or this delta B AX plus delta B BX should be greater than the individual marginal benefits accruing to party B for participating in X. What does this mean? Any activity, if I and you, we decide to do something together and we put some money in it. And if out of this activity, I gain and you lose. If my gain is equal to your loss in that activity, that would not come under mutuality. Mutuality means my gains, they would not have an effect on your loss if you have a loss, or my gains and your gains are complementing each other. So this is what we mean by marginal benefits accruing to party A for participating in an activity are not equal to the marginal losses accruing to the other party B for participating in X. And if these two conditions, 2 or 2.5, whatever you want to call them, if they are fulfilled, then we say this phenomenon is mutual. And mutual insurance would be an example from the conventional domain, or takaful is pitched as an example of a mutual phenomenon in Islamic banking and finance. We would go through 1 or 2 models of takaful being used in Islamic banking and finance. If the above condition, the set of conditions, isn't fulfilled, then the relationship, it could be a transaction, activity,
A game may be a zero-sum
game. This means zero-sum games mean my benefit is actually your loss.
and your loss is my benefit, and vice versa.
This means the benefit of one party is actually loss of the other party to the transaction. And a naked, obvious example of this zero-sum game is gambling. And we are aware of what happens in gambling. So there are two parties in gambling, party A, party B. They put some money on the table. In this case, $10 they are contributed by this man, and $10 they are contributed by this woman. So that pooled money is $20. And if they decide to toss a coin, the outcome of this would determine who gets what. I'm still using this £1 coin,
showing Queen Elizabeth II, although she has passed away, and we have got a new king, but we have yet to receive the coins bearing the head of the king.
So if this coin is flipped, and if it is queen, then party A receives $20. Nothing is left in the pot, and party B receives a duck. So the marginal benefits to party A for participating in this activity is $10. $10 because they received $20. So $10 they contributed and they received 20, which means 10 is actually the amount of marginal benefits. And this is exactly the same as the loss accruing to this party. Okay, so because marginal benefits accruing to party A for taking part in this activity X is equal to the marginal loss or marginal losses accruing to party B for participating in this activity, this is not an example of mutuality. Rather, this is a zero-sum game, which is gambling. And opposite would hold. If a tail comes, then of course party B would be happy and party A would be losing $10. Again, this would be whatever be the outcome, whether this is head or tail, this would remain a zero-sum game. And this is an example of prohibited gambling. This is gambling, and I think I have explained earlier as well. In case of prohibited gambling, this fundamental condition should be met. Otherwise, the phenomenon may not be deemed as gambling. And that is this 20 pounds. So this money contributed by party A, this money contributed by party B, it goes into a pool, and then a draw, toss, or whatever takes place. Outcome of this makes the winning party entitled to receive this full amount or part of it. That is gambling. Prohibited gambling takes place when two or more parties, they pool their money or resources into something, and they benefit, one of them or two of them, they benefit from this money fully or partially, depending on the outcome of a stochastic process. If the money, this $20, okay, if this money was coming from someone else, then this would not be prohibited gambling. This could be considered as an example of prize. If the activity X is a meaningful activity, i.e., if the government of, if, for example, the king tomorrow announces that from 2024, whosoever wins Wimbledon final would be receiving £100 million. That would be an example of a prize given by an independent party, and that is actually encouraged in Islam. Now, from this simple example, we go to a multi-party example. There are many participants in an activity X. They could be 100, they could be 1,000, they could be thousands, or they could be millions if this is a global or very big product. So these people, these participants, they contribute amounts of money into this pot. So there is some pooled money by these participants, X number of participants, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, whatever be the number. So a large number of people, they pool small amounts of money into this pot. And why they want to do this thing? Because they would like one of them or some of them to benefit from this pooled money in future if a need arises. This kind of phenomena, they are everywhere in the world.
In certain countries, these are called roskas. In other countries, these are called committees. In the Arab world, okay, this could be an example of al-jama'iyya.
So some people, okay, they just start saving money on a regular basis into a pot. In future, they stand a chance of utilizing full amount in the pot or part of it. Normally, the arrangement is that, this pooled money, if this is taken by one or some of them, this should be returned on a future date as well. So if this party received at T1 this amount of money, so this party is receiving the money from the pot at T1. In one variation of this arrangement at T2 or by the end of a certain time period, this party should be returning this money. This is an example of mutuality and cooperation. So this is a cooperative arrangement, as at least one person becomes better off for a certain time period without adversely affecting other members of the group. So this is an example, very simple example of mutuality. And this will not be considered as prohibited gambling. Now, keeping in mind this one, if one person sets up a kind of business, a program, scheme, whatever we want to call, scheme normally is associated with some negative thing, or say a program, a phenomenon, by putting some money aside and asking other people, or you can participate, you can put some money into this thing, small amount of money. This red guy is the initiator. It is the operator, we call in the context of takaful, we call it takaful operator. So we'll come to that one later. But this guy, he is the initiator, puts some money and then invites other people to start putting money into this pot. Why? Because if in future an adversary happens, an accident happens, there is incidence of ill health or something bad happens, then if you have been contributing to this pot, then you would benefit from this pot so that your hardship is alleviated. So this could be one person. After some time, this one person says, look, I have lost my car. Can I benefit from this money, which all of us have been contributing to? Or this could be many people. This would be an example of mutuality. And in the Islamic banking and finance context, we would like to call it takaful. So takaful is an arrangement allowing the participating members to benefit from access to help in the event of an adversary or loss. I would not go into details of differences between conventional insurance and takaful. For this one, you can Google. There is a lot of information available online and elsewhere as well. So takaful allows the participants to benefit from access to help in the event of an adversity or loss. Hence, this is called a cooperative arrangement. In practice, however, when we refer to the organizational structure or the company structure of the takaful companies, we find that there are very few elements of mutuality in the takaful business. Takaful business should be the way I have, or the mutual business, it should be the way it's core of this should be the way I have explained. However, in practice, cooperatives, including takaful business, they have adopted only certain aspects of mutuality, primarily because one stakeholder, maybe takaful operator, benefits from the whole arrangements improportionately with respect to the participants. And some people, they tend to criticize this aspect of takaful. And I believe that there is a room to improve on this one. Because of very few takaful activities being in the nature of cooperative, it has actually become part of a general problem. As I said, Islamic banking and finance started with a promise, or it would be based on profit loss sharing. This would be a share arrangement. This would be based on profit loss sharing. Depositors and shareholders and the managers of Islamic banks, they would be treated more fairly. But this hasn't materialized to that effect in the practice of Islamic banking and finance, as we observe that the shareholders, they benefit from Islamic banking and finance improportionately as compared to depositors or other stakeholders. So from that viewpoint, Islamic banking and finance has not fulfilled its promise, and there is a need to improve on this one. Similarly, takaful, when we say, oh, conventional insurance is bad and takaful insurance is better because it is based on the idea of mutuality and cooperation. And if these elements are not there, then you are coming up with an alternative, which is actually not very different from the arrangement you actually wanted to replace. Profit sharing investment accounts in Islamic banking, they are a very good example of the lack of profit sharing. Profit sharing investment accounts were developed and they were pitched as an alternative to interest-based savings products. And the idea was Islamic banks would not offer savings accounts, rather they would offer investment accounts, allowing the investment account holders to have access to the profit of the bank with which they have their accounts. In reality, the access to the profit of the bank, Islamic bank, by the depositors is rather limited. And I would explain this with this example. You might take this module as a criticism of Islamic banking and finance. Yes, there are certain aspects of Islamic banking and finance which must be criticized because there is always some room for improvement. So I'm not questioning the overall authenticity of Islamic banking and finance, but as a technical expert in Islamic banking and finance, it is important that we look into certain aspects of Islamic banking and finance which need improvement. Now, in case of profit sharing investment accounts, these PSIA holders, account holders, they put the money with the bank. The bank uses this money for its banking business, financing, and it generates profit. Profit sharing investment account holders, they should have access to this profit as the shareholders of the bank. But Islamic banks, they have introduced a phenomenon, two reserves called profit equalization reserves and investment risk reserves. They are used in such a way that profit sharing investment account holders end up receiving a share in the profit, which is more or less the same as interest rate offered by conventional banks in the market. So they come up with a phenomenon which is based on putting some money in profit equalization reserve, putting some money in investment risk reserve, and announcing the profit shares for the profit sharing investment account holders such that the share of the profit going to PSIA holders is not significantly different from what other conventional banks are offering in the market. After paying this interest rate benchmarked return to the profit sharing investment account holders, the shareholders of the Islamic banks, they receive the residual profit. So yes, the name is there, profit sharing investment accounts. However, the profit sharing investment account holders end up receiving something which is very similar in terms of amount to what the saving account holders with conventional banks in the market are otherwise receiving. So it's not the practice of profit sharing investment accounts. It's not a very good example of mutuality and cooperation, because the banks, okay, they come up with this phenomenon, which is Sharia compliant. But this phenomenon of introduction of profit equalization reserve and investment risk reserve dampens the mutuality and cooperativeness of profit sharing investment accounts. Similar kind of thing happens in takaful. In takaful, the takaful policy holders, they contribute money which is managed by the takaful company. This takaful operator, takaful company, would use the money contributed by the takaful policy holders to invest. And of course, some money is put aside in a claim fund. So if a policyholder needs money because something has happened, then those claims by the takaful policyholders would be entertained by the money which is in this claim fund. So they would be actually receiving the money from the claim fund. The money which is invested in Sharia compliant activities, if it generates some return, some of the return goes into this contingency fund, which becomes part of the claim fund in due time. And there are the excess funds. These excess funds, like in case of profit sharing investment accounts, can go to the takaful policy holders at the end of their policy, which is benchmarked with respect to a market index. Could be interest based, or it could be a benchmark which is used by the insurance industry in general. The residual profits, of course, they go to the takaful operators or the shareholders in the takaful operator company. Takaful operator is in almost all cases a company limited by shares, a private company, private limited company, or a private company, which is not structured as a cooperative. Rather, this is structured as a company limited by shares or a partnership, etc. This structure within, okay, this could have some elements of mutuality and cooperation, especially the takaful policy holders. They contribute what is known as contributions, or in some cases we call donations, into a pot. And then because they benefit from that pot equally in the sense they stand a chance of benefit from it if something happens, then we can say that this aspect is cooperative and mutual. However, the way this whole thing is managed, it is a lot more like a company rather than a cooperative. So this is another example of lack of mutuality in Islamic finance. The first example was profit sharing investment accounts, and the second one is takaful. There is another takaful model which is based on wakala. The one I shared, this could be based on mudaraba, but I did not refer to it. This one is a wakala based model. Again, takaful policy holders, they contribute money, and this takaful operator serves as a wakil or agent, investment agent. It retains its wakala management fee from the takaful policy holders contributions. Rest of the money goes into an investment fund, and part of this money, it is actually retained as cash, which could be used as a claim fund. The investments, they generate money. Part of this goes to takaful policy holders, and another part that is retained by takaful company, and it goes to its shareholders. Now, the way this profit sharing ratio is determined, a major bulk of that one, actually this profit that goes to the takaful company, normally it's about 95%. So 95% of the profits generated by the investment fund go to the takaful company, and only a small amount of money, about a small share, 5%, that goes to the policy holders. Again, yes, okay, there is an improvement in mutuality, but there is improportionate benefiting one party and the other party receiving only very marginal benefits from this one. Then there is a better model which is emerging now in quite a number of countries, waqf-based model. So we have policyholders, they contribute to a waqf, not to a pot, a waqf. And this waqf is actually managed by the takaful operator. And this waqf makes investments. The returns from, and of course, because there is a wakala wakala between Waqf and the Takaful operator. The wakala fee is received by the Takaful operator. Any returns from the investments come back into the Waqf, and the claims by the policyholders, they are actually entertained by the money in the Waqf, liquid money in the Waqf. This is a model which is very close to the idea of mutuality and cooperation. And as I said, okay, this is now becoming widespread in some countries, like in Pakistan, or there are two Takaful operators in Bangladesh as well, which have an underlying model which is based on Waqf, and some other countries as well. So this is actually a good example of mutuality and cooperation in Takaful. The first two models, Mudaraba was criticized heavily, and then we had Wakala-based model, which was an improvement over the previous one. And this Waqf-based model, I believe this is the future. And as I said, this is being practiced in quite a number of countries already. After this rather traditional example of Takaful and mutuality in Islamic finance, I would like to introduce you to something about which you have already started thinking, and you might have started questioning the health of my mind. What is this guy talking about? Organized begging in the context of Islamic finance. Yeah, whatever you are seeing on the screen, actually, this is what it means, begging. Now, looking into begging to come up with a financial product, and looking into begging to come up with an Islamic financial product, which could be called an Islamic financial product based on micro philanthropy. I'll give you an example of this magazine called The Big Issue in UK. The founder of The Big Issue, I happen to know him. I worked with him for some time. This guy came up with this idea that these beggars on the streets of London and other cities in UK, it's not a good picture. I think begging, when we see anywhere in the world, we somehow, as visitors, we don't like it. And it's a nuisance in many countries and many cities. You go to a shopping mall and dozens of people are after you, seeking some money from you. And you forget your own shopping and you are trying to hide from these guys. Of course, the phenomenon of begging in UK is not significant, but still, look, you would find homeless people, people sitting on the footpath and asking for money in a polite manner. Okay, they won't be as aggressive as beggars in some other parts of the world, but you see some people on the streets. And because of social problems with begging, quite a number of countries, they have actually made begging illegal. You cannot beg in Dubai, for example. And there are quite a few other countries where begging is illegal. Now, the idea of this big issue was, well, we cannot make begging illegal. This would be inhumane, but we can organize it. The beggars were encouraged to buy The Big Issue from the publisher for a small price of 50 pence per issue, for example, per copy. And the magazine was priced about £3.50. So these guys would be actually then selling this magazine, and this magazine would have stories on homelessness, income inequalities, why begging is on a rise, what should be done, what is the role of responsible citizens to the people who are less advantaged, and so on. That kind of social issues. Still, this is being printed in the United Kingdom. So these guys, they would be buying it for a very small price, 50p, and they would be selling it for £3.50. People like me, if I come out of the London Underground, I find this guy holding The Big Issue in his hand, and if I feel like helping him, I'll give £3 or £3.50. So in this way, when I am buying this magazine, I am giving that guy £3. And if this guy has sold 10 copies, that would be £30. 20 copies, that would be £60. 100 copies, that would be £300. There have been some studies on The Big Issue. You can Google. A lot of beggars, they came out of begging and they started their own stalls. A number of stalls, newspaper stalls and some other stalls in the central London before COVID were set up by what is known as the graduates of the big issue program. So this is an example of organizing this activity. And in a number of countries, this is a huge market. We don't realize it. There is an estimate of about $50 billion market worldwide. So there is an estimated 54.7 billion to 127.75 billion begging money collected in the world on an annual basis. This is the market, huge market. In India only, 14.6 billion are collected by beggars on an annual basis. It's serious money. Nigeria's corresponding figure is about say $9 billion on an annual basis. And this is why we find, especially in countries like India, this organized begging is a mafia. Okay? And there are a lot of social ills associated with this one. Now, if this is a market, I said 54.7 billion to 127.75 billion. By the way, okay, this is based on pre-COVID figures. If we go for the new figures, well, this would be a lot more than that. But let's be conservative. It's about $100 billion market worldwide. I think there is a need to organize it in a more sophisticated manner. We will look into it. This is something I got from online a few years back. This was a story which was shared on BBC and in the local newspapers as well. And this story was actually very interesting. Beggars making up to £45,000 a year on Nottingham's streets. And Nottingham is not a big city like London. But police actually arrested someone who was begging. And when they made investigation, another thing came. The HM revenue guys, when they came to know that this guy was actually making £45,000 by begging on the streets of Nottingham City. The tax guys, they said, oh, their concern was only this thing. Okay, this guy is making £45,000 on an annual basis, but he's not paying taxes. So how can we tax this guy? Just as a reference, okay, £45,000 is a serious amount of money for an average person in UK. My son, for example, he graduated this year. He's done his Master of Engineering in Mechanical, and his starting salary would be 10,000 less than this one. So just to give you a comparison, so £45,000, this should attract some serious amount of tax. But the tax guys, their concern was not why this person is begging. So we haven't been taxing these beggars. Apparently, this beggar has been making 45K on an annual basis. So this is actually the nature of the market. And you guys, if you are interested, you should look into it and see what kind of interesting things can be done with begging. So organized begging, and I would like to propose this to be called as micro-philanthropy, could be used as an effective tool for meeting the requirements of Sustainable Development Goal 1 and 2. This is your homework. Look at what is SDG 1 and SDG 2. Of course, this has something to do with hunger and poverty, but I would like you to Google and see. So we are saying organized begging, to be named as microphilanthropy, could be used as an effective tool for SDG 1 and SDG 2. I'll give example of microphilanthropy with reference to Pakistan. Now, we have done some research. There are 55 million people living under the poverty line. You can get this figure from World Bank, IMF, and the Pakistan Economic Survey as well. Now, an estimated 25 million beg in one form or another. This is very interesting. You have to broaden the definition of begging. So 55 million people are poor. 55 million people out of now, the new survey says about 230 million. So out of 230 million, 55 million people are poor, and about half of them, 25 million, they beg in one form or another. And given these very interesting figures, let's look at this model. So out of these beggars, if we focus on 1 million, and if out of this 1 million, one person, let's look at that person. This person has 25 successful hits. What do we mean by that? The person is going to everyone, please give me money, give me money. Oh, in the name of Allah, this thing. Someone gives him some money, that is called one successful hit. And these guys, they're on the streets all the time, from early morning till late night. Many of them, they sleep there. Coming up with this figure of 25 successful hits per hour, sorry. Okay, no, this is not day. This means, okay, if this person works 8 hours per day, there will be 200 hits per day. And average per hit is 10 rupees. That means 2,000 rupees per day. 2,000 per day, this is nothing. These guys, they make a lot more than that one. Now, if in this program, this micro philanthropy program, if the 1 million people they are participating, we say you get half of your collections, 1,000 as your daily wage, which means your monthly salary or monthly wage would be 25,000 rupees. But you then become part of this big pot of money, which is 25 billion rupees monthly contribution to the investment pool. So this whole thing would give about 25 billion rupees into an investment fund. These are some old figures. 300 billion annual contribution to the investment pool, which is equivalent to about 1.5 billion. Now, if we go for this new exchange rate, the Pakistani rupee is going down. This is about 1 billion. So $1 billion on an annual basis coming from the ordinary people through these beggars. This could be a very interesting proposition for a country which has been begging IMF for about 3-4 billion and has tried to do anything as part of IMF conditionalities. So this serious amount of money is there back home. They are not looking into it. This is how the model works. Okay, now I've just daily collections per beggar, 2,000 rupees. And we don't call this beggar. We call it a micro philanthropy agent. Total daily collections are from this 1 million, 2 billion rupees. Number of working days per month, 25. Total monthly collection is 50 billion rupees. And of course, as I said earlier, out of this daily collection of 2,000, 1,000 goes to the person to survive. Total monthly wage bill for all those participating in this one would be 25 billion. Investment pool would receive the other 25 billion. So actual capital raised in this way, or the annual capital raised is 300 billion, which is about 1 billion. If you invest this 1 billion for the benefit of those who are taking part in this program, this would help them to improve their lives on a sustainable basis. So this is actually I think this is one example where a lot of people come on board and they mutually benefit each other and they can benefit the economy as well. So if you have a program which is generating $1 billion on an annual basis, a lot of social programs can be developed. The guys who are collecting micro philanthropic contributions on the streets, after some time, if not them, their children, they could be shareholders in hospitals, schools, colleges, universities, and whatever be the focus of investment of this investment fund. This would help the people in need, who are in need now, on a sustainable basis. They may become shareholders of companies and businesses generating a lot of money. Now, the guys on the streets, they have only one skill, that is fundraising, capital raising. Those who are into investment banking, you would know that fundraising and capital raising, this is remunerated very heavily. This is a very difficult job. You have an army of beggars who have the required skills to fundraise. They should be used in an organized manner to raise this amount of money. In this respect, technology is central. You have to come up with a technological platform to organize these 1 million. I'm just focusing on 1 million. You might have millions of people participating in this kind of program, because some individuals, they're already using technology for begging. In Ramadan, on a daily basis, I would receive begging requests from India, from some African countries, from so many other countries. I would not know whether they exist. But these guys, some of these guys, they're using LinkedIn to Beg, which is a professional platform, and they are successful. Sometimes I'm in a mental kind of situation where I'm soft-hearted that day. Someone sends a very nice email, very nice message on LinkedIn, and asking me, oh, can you send me $100? I am in dire need. So technology is already being used for raising money, for micro philanthropy. So technology would be central to this kind of activity. You create a micro philanthropy app, micro philanthropy online or web portal. So if those participating in the program approach people with this thing in their hand, and so if you tap, you will get them, you will be donating. This is possible. And already in a lot of cases, this is happening. I was in Manila a few weeks back, and this one woman followed me for about 10 meters. And she was, of course, begging. And she was begging in English. I genuinely did not have cash on me, because I am a cashless guy. And I use technology. I've got cards, I've got Apple Pay. I use these things. And because she was chasing me, and I said, honestly, I don't have cash. And she took out her mobile phone. She said, you can pay cashless. Of course, I didn't pay. So technology is very central to this one. Now, more important is human resource management in this case. And you probably would be inclined to agree with me that these two things, they are very, very important when you are trying to sell something. Persistence and what I call shamelessness. So persistence and shamelessness is an asset that a beggar holds more than anyone else in the world. So if you train these guys, they can actually raise a lot of money for good / social causes. Of course, in this whole process, okay, you give them some kind of self-esteem as well. They remain persistent and they say, I am raising this money for a social cause, not for myself. These guys, they have, this persistence. They keep on hitting, and they know that if not the 10th, if not the 20th, 25th, that would be the success. So if you use technology, if you bring an objective to this activity, this can be a very big source of capital raising for a lot of activities. Now, by 2033, if you have in a country like any country, okay, in a country of decent size, if you initiate this process, in next 10 years, you can have a fund size of about $20 billion. Now, if you have your AUM of 20 billion, you would be able to do a lot of things, lot of investments into the enterprises which have social relevance, a lot of support for the causes which have socio-economic relevance to the communities and the countries in which you would be operating. Serious amount of money. This would bring benefits to everyone. The people who are in the program, they would be the first beneficiaries. So all of them, they would mutually benefit. And this operating company would have very strong technological capabilities. And of course, they would have to come up with a training program which would train these participating people to do their job more effectively. Another example at the end, this is housing cooperative based on Waqf. Housing is a focus of policy agenda in all the countries, developed and developing alike. We know that housing is one of the basic needs, and there is shortage of housing almost everywhere in the world. The developing countries I go to, one thing I persistently notice is the construction of new houses. This means housing is in short supply. Now, Islamic banks, like their conventional counterparts, offer home financing products to facilitate purchase of houses. Mortgages are a good product to sell in almost all the countries where Islamic banking and finance exists. The existing products based on murabaha and diminishing musharaka are everywhere. In United Kingdom, for example, diminishing musharaka based model is used to offer what is known as home purchase plans or Islamic mortgages. If you go to the Middle East, in the Gulf countries, there are some products which are based on murabaha. If you go to other countries like Pakistan, a lot of products that are based on diminishing musharaka. The economic profiles of such products are more or less the same as conventional interest-based mortgages. I'm talking about the economic profile. Of course, they are Sharia compliant. And because of the similarities of the economic profiles of Islamic mortgages and conventional mortgages, a lot of people criticize and they suggest some alternatives. One alternative could be a housing-based cooperative which would offer help for purchasing homes. So a housing cooperative based on Waqf could be an example of a third generation Islamic financial products. The basic idea is to structure an Islamic financial product that allows families to have access to affordable yet high quality housing, which is the objective of mortgages. A primary objective could be to let families to have perpetual residential rights rather than buying homes. This is a very interesting aspect. Mortgages, conventional mortgages, allow you to have ownership rights on certain homes. The home you want to buy, you own it. My idea is to come up with perpetual residential rights, not ownership rights. Why? If I want to have a home, why? There could be one primary objective, because I want to live in a place I don't face a risk of getting evicted. So I want to have a permanent house. And for this, I save, I make a lot of efforts. And, this is one of my objectives of life, to have my own home before I die. So this is objective number one, to own a home when I am alive. And a lot of people, rather confusingly, they say, and my objective is to leave behind a home for my children, my family. First thing I can recognize, but the second one in many cases is being foolish. There are some statistics which suggest that when a couple, husband and wife, they die, within 6 months of their death, there are more than 50% chances, around 60% chances that their children would sell the house they constructed with a lot of effort. So people saying that, oh, I want to leave a home for my children, this is being silly. More than half of families, after both father and mother have died, they tend to sell that house. So the idea is to come up with an Islamic financial product which allows the participants, the users of this product, to have perpetual residential rights, i.e., you should have a choice. You should enjoy living in that property as long as you want, and your children as well, but they wouldn't own. Neither would you. A housing cooperative based on Waqf may work like this. Step number one, a Waqf is established. Number two, an SPV is set up. I'm giving you stepwise information. Number three, the SPV issues sukuk al-mudaraba or sukuk al-musharaka. So number one, a Waqf is set up. Number two, an SPV is set up. Number three, sukuk al-mudaraba or sukuk al-musharaka are issued by the SPV. Step number four, investors buy sukuk. This is initial funding. So initial funding is raised. Step number five, a land acquisition and development company is established to acquire and develop land. So you have set up Waqf, you have set up SPV, SPV issues sukuk and raises money. And then the fifth one is a land company. Landco is set up, which acquires and develops land. So Landco is owned by SPV. Its objective is to acquire and undertake initial development of land for the purpose of town planning. It will also be responsible for construction of houses and other facilities in the new town. So you're developing a new town, small one. So Waqf, SPV, sukuk, Landco. Step number six, a housing cooperative is set up as a subsidiary of Waqf or an entity linked with Waqf. It's not liked with, it's linked with Waqf. We call it housing cooperative. So Waqf, SPV, Sukuk, Landco, and housing cooperative. Housing cooperative offers membership. Members start paying membership fee. So what happened? The Sukuk holders, monthly, quarterly returns are paid out of the subscription to housing cooperative. These members, they would would be huge in number. So the sukuk holders, they receive their initial returns out of the subscription to housing cooperatives by the members. The sukuk proceeds are used for acquiring land and developing it. All the assets are held by SPV to the value of the sukuk issued. Any value creation over and above the amount outstanding of the sukuk will be transferred to the waqf. Let me explain with the help of a numerical example. 10,000 housing units and 500 commercial units to be constructed. This is the objective. Cost of each unit to be constructed is 200,000 pounds. Total project cost is 2.1 billion pounds. The money, this money, 2.1 billion, slightly more than that, is raised by issuing a 2.5 billion sukuk. And by the way, now it's very common to see 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, 5 billion kind of sukuk being issued. Where is the money for everyone? When you have 10,000 housing units, 500 commercial units, your cost of construction is 200,000 per unit. And this was with reference to the UK, but this can be comparable in Saudi Arabia, in Malaysia, Indonesia, wherever, of course, the denomination would change to ringgit or rupiah or whatever. But the argument holds. In this case, 200,000 pounds, if this is the cost of construction, this unit, once it is sold, and it is sold with this, it's not sold, by the way, this is given to the members who would enjoy perpetual residential rights. The amount of money generated by these guys, okay, would be about double of this one, 400,000 over a time. They would be contributing to this one. So this total project cost of 2.1, we say 2 billion over a period of time, the project would generate about 4 billion, and the sukuk holders, they would benefit from this increase in value. Of course, whatever is the return, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, 6%, 10% return, that would be going to the sukuk holders. And the remaining amount of money, the net return, the return net of all the obligations, that would go back to Waqf. This town, because it is owned by the Waqf, and the Waqf is a live Waqf, not the Waqf which we see in Syria, in Turkey, the old Waqf, Awqaf, the properties are in shambles. No. This is a modern Waqf, which would be like any other cooperative housing society, state-of-the-art technology, the towers and houses like you see in Dubai, here and there, that kind of cooperative housing societies. It would continue to generate returns because nothing is owned by private people within that town. Even cafes, commercial units, houses, schools, hospitals, they would be actually owned by the Waqf or the entities linked to the Waqf. And all these are income generating activities. This 2.5 billion sukuk would probably give rise to a value in over a period of 20 years. 2.5 billion sukuk may give rise to a value equal to 25 billion, 10 times increase in value over time. A lot of new asset accumulation would take place. Now, in this case, because everyone is a beneficiary, you are not selling the houses to people, you are letting the people to live in it, and very comfortable living for them. When they die, their children would not be able to sell because you don't own the house. You have perpetual residential rights for yourself and for your generations to come. As long as they want to live in the property, they have this right of living. No one can question. This could be a new model of living where I have the right to live in a very decent property, depending on my circumstances. There would not be just one size kind of properties, different kind of properties. And your contributions, which would be in the spirit of donations, the true spirit of donations to the Waqf, not the takaful kind of donations. These are very new examples, radical examples of product development and innovation in Islamic finance. And I have referred these to third generation Islamic financial products. This should be the focus of innovation in Islamic banking and finance in the years to come. A lot of youngsters, they are impressed by fintech. Of course, financial technology is very important, but when I look at fintech products being offered in the name of Islamic finance, they're nothing but digital wallets. Someone claiming, oh, I have set up an Islamic digital bank in country so and so. When you dig down, it's actually a wallet. You haven't come up with anything innovative. This is a technology which is widely used in the conventional domain anyway. And you have just white labeled this product and you are portraying to be a champion of innovation. No, these are not examples of innovation. They might be considered as smart applications of technology. But to innovate in Islamic banking and finance with an effect, you have to think innovatively. You have to think in such a way that you give rise to something which is probably not in existence in the conventional domain. This idea of perpetual residential rights in this present form, this is non-existent. This has similarities with some other phenomena, but this is how you should be actually looking into the things. We would further expand this Wimbledon story in one of the forthcoming IFAPs. And in the meantime, I would encourage you to start thinking about how you can come up with an Islamic financial product around Wimbledon or something like this one. You can actually come up with a bigger Islamic financial product around football World Cup. You just see how many people viewed, I'm not saying attending physically the football matches in Doha last time. How many people were interested in the Football World Cup? And accordingly, you come up with an Islamic financial product around it. Maybe when we start that IFAP, I would ask one or two of you to come up with your ideas of product development of this sort. Till then, goodbye. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.